Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Listen Up. What is your relationship with your money? Wow, I hope everybody is doing well. Just wanted to, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this information with somebody else. Man, oh man, we've been on this roller coaster ride about our money and getting our money together. And then what I found is that, in order for us to grasp the concepts of what we need to do to diversify our income and diversify our assets, we really need to work on, clearing up some of our issues, right? Because we all come with baggage. We all come with something, right? And in order for us to clear out all of this so that we can go into 2023 in a better mindset and a better outcome, we need to handle some of these issues. And especially in this time of year when everything is pretty heavy, it can be wonderful and it can be festive. But on the other hand, it gets really heavy for a lot of people, right? So let's go on over to Grandma's Cookie Jar Secret. You want to stay to the end of today's conversation, because we're going to talk about post traumatic stress disorder. We're going to deep dive into what it looks like, what are the signs and symptoms, what causes post traumatic stress. We hear about it a lot, right? We hear about people talking about the soldiers that come from war because they've experienced post traumatic stress, so they come back with it, right? But we never really get a good, deep understanding of what is this, right? I've been very transparent. I was diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder because of the things that happened, some traumatic things that happened in my childhood. And as I became an adult, I'm an advocate or a pioneer for eradicating domestic violence because I am a survivor of domestic violence as well. Again, trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. So let's go on over to Grandma's Cookie Jar before I get into today's information. And we are going to go through this and we're going to learn some aha things myself. Hold on, let me grab some tea, right? It says simply blessed. Y'all, I got my ginger back. Ooh wee. Grandma's Cookie Jar just sitting over here waiting for us to grab a nugget for today. Grandma's Cookie Jar secret today says, go where you feel most alive. Ooh, that goes into our topic because we're talking about mental health. And it's, we do not really put the importance on getting good sound help when we have something going on mentally. We feel like it's something to be ashamed of, right? You all know this has to be something that's really in my heart that I'm passionate about, because I can't get through Grandma's Cookie Jar without explaining more. But go where you feel most alive, and that means finding. And they used to say a long time ago, and I didn't understand what they meant when they said go find yourself or I'm finding myself. But that is so true. I don't know if it's too because we get older and we start to thinking about the things that have happened in our life, and we start digging into more wisdom. I don't know, they say with gray hair comes wisdom, because man, oh man, I tell you, wow, I'm not even going to share that part about the gray hair, right? But go where you feel most alive. And when you feel yourself sinking into maybe a dark space, my happy place is music, or my happy place is driving a long drive, or dancing, getting up and putting on, Aretha Franklin. Respect is one of my favorite songs, listening to her whole album, or, just put something on that takes you to a happy place, right? One day or day one, you decide. That's really great too, because one day or day one, you decide. Are we going to procrastinate and push it off? Or are we going to handle it today? I know some of the things that they talked about with the 22 signs or symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I'm gonna stick to my notes today. Where are my safety specs? Because I need them today. I need those today because we really want to understand. In order for us to really find a a reasonable solution for us, or a solution that makes sense for us, we got to understand it and identify it. For the longest, I didn't understand and did not know that I was suffering with post traumatic stress. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I had, trouble sleeping. I didn't understand, why, I was hyper vigilant about a lot of things. I had no clue that I was living on edge constantly, right? Just thought that was the way of life, unless you've already, you have your finances in order, and if you want to be married, your marriage is in order. All these things are in order. I didn't know. I thought it was the way of life, right? And some of us think that putting out fires from fire to fire is a way of life, but there is a better life and a better way of living. Let's go ahead and get into these post-traumatic stress in adults. This is in adults now. You can identify that's one of the things that happened to me as a child. I didn't get help when I witnessed violence against my mom. Nobody helped that 3-year-old little girl, right? That witnessed the violence. Nobody helped her. So it stayed inside. And I want to talk about that too, because I was in service in church on Sunday. And when I tell you all, that service was amazing. It helped me tremendously to get through some of the healing. Now, y'all, I also, we talk about our journals, right? This is one of my journals that I keep in my purse because you have thoughts all during the day that you might want to jot something down. And then, when you come back to it, man, it helps you. It really, really helps me to stay on track. So a couple of things, as I'm going to mix them together so that we can understand and see, hear both, okay? All right. So when we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, over 70% of adults live in the United States have gone through some type of traumatic event at some point in their lives. This is according to the National Council of Behavioral Health. Okay, and October is PTSD Awareness Month, right? So in this article from BetterHelp, article from BetterHelp. This was an article written October the 6th, 2022. So again, for PTSD Awareness Month, okay? So talk about how, experiences of traumatic events. This is saying that you're not alone in this. Sometimes we get in our own corners and we feel like this is just happening to me. But here it states that over 70% of adults that are living in the United States have experienced some form of a traumatic experience or a traumatic event. But some people it affects differently, and we'll get to more of that in the article. Many of these adults seek treatment, and you should seek treatment if you notice any of the signs of post-traumatic stress. And even watching it in our children, right? If we, and I don't know if I know in my era, children were to be seen and not heard. So, I learned how to be smiling faces because I didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know what it was, didn't know why. I've always had an issue or concern sleeping, right? Just didn't know why, right? From little, as long as I can remember. My parents told me that, but my first traumatic experience happened when I was 3 years old. So as we continue to go, traumatic events often manifest in post-traumatic stress disorder, most commonly known as PTSD, it is a mental health disorder, right? And it's something that occurred because of a traumatic experience, okay? Which in a mental health disorder that can cause deep feelings of fear, the tendency to be easily startled, and a history of trauma, which occurring in daily life or due to one's one-time situation. So it can be a one-time traumatic experience, and boom, that's what happens at whatever age. Like for me, age 3. I'm going to shift over to my notes from, like I said, from my service on yesterday, which I love the church that I attend because we get amazing lessons on life that we can actually, it helps you, right, to get through things and really to realize or become aware, right? This talked about, we say PTSD in this article, and we're talking about it reminded me, like I said, in the service of PTSD. It was a disassociation, right? The heart. I want to talk about, well, not the heart, but I want to talk about the heat first, right? So it's like difficulty and conflict is what we're talking about in the service. So difficulty and conflict is like the heat, and the heat helps you to tear out and to become, right? We talked about that before. We talked about the difficulties in life. So we can either let that difficulty, that traumatic experience, we can let that stop us, or we can realize that it has happened and it is a traumatic, like a roadblock, and then we can decide that we're not going to let that roadblock steal from us, right? Steal from who we really are, because we start to suppress. Now, I also wanted everybody to know I'm not a clinician, I'm expressing what I learned and my aha moment and why I love the naturopathic arena and why I'm a wellness coach. Because as I continue to help other people, right? What is it? I believe it's Zig Ziglar that says you help enough people get what they wanted, then you'll get what you want and what you need. And so me sharing these aha moments with everybody, because think about it, for years and years, I suffered without getting any type of assistance and didn't even know that it was a mental health disorder. So we learned in the service, going back, I'm kind of all over the place, but we learned in the service is that when a traumatic experience happens, it can suppress you and it can cause you to stay stuck in that space. So a part of you stays stuck while the other part of you continues to grow, right? So if a part of you is stuck, he used the parable, our pastor used the parable of 30%. If 30% of you is stuck at 3 years old, like in my case, a 3-year-old, and then you continue to grow, well, you start making decisions out of, what is that, 70% of yourself and not the whole 100%, because that 30% is still stuck there in that trauma. So I see a little girl stuck there shivering and shaking while the adult is still trying to go on and make decisions. So now you're making decisions based off of only 70% of your whole self. That was so, like, I mean, that just blew my mind. Then as I continue and we continue to understand more, you get another traumatic experience that happens. So if that takes, maybe say 25, first time I experienced, domestic violence, right? In my own personal. So 3 years old, domestic violence with my raising, being raised. So 30%, right? That took 30%. Now you take another 30%. Now you got 60% of yourself that is in these traumatic, I want to say, stockholds or just in this traumatic space. So now you got 60%, but your 40% of your adult is making decisions or life-changing experiences, right? So that's why it's important for us to dig into understanding, what's going on with us so we can make better decisions, not only with our money, but with our life. So if you got all this trauma stored in your body, stored in your cells, when I was in a car accident, that was another traumatic experience, right? Tore my body up. 2 years of dating my doctors. There you go, another traumatic experience. So now you got what, 30, 60, 90% of yourself stuck in trauma. Only 10% of yourself are making decisions. I'm so grateful that I was able to push and keep pushing and still accomplishing. But think about that trauma and how that, affected my decision making. And, you continue to push and continue to push through. How do I get beyond that? And I'm telling you, being in a position of getting into therapy to help you overcome that. In the article, and I'll continue to go back and forth, let's go back to the article. In the article, it says that we can take a PTSD test that can help us to understand that, right? Understand, is this what's happening to me? Is this what's causing me to feel this fear? Is this what's causing me to have a tendency to be startled? Is this what's causing me, like because of my history of trauma, is this what's causing me to make the decisions or to have unhealthy relationships? Is this what's causing me to have to go into retail therapy? Is this what that's what it is. It's not that it's something wrong with me. It's something that I've experienced that's holding me back, right? So in order for us to break through, I'm going to make this a multiple series as we go through these signs and symptoms, because if not, this will be a 2-3 hour podcast. And I know our attention span is not very long, but I wanted to catch your attention because this is something throughout the rest of this week. I want us to really address this so that we can get beyond this and we can go into 2023 strong, right? And that's why people ask me, why are you so transparent? I'm transparent because I know that the pain that I suffered, it was not in vain. It was to help other people around me that may not have a voice, may not be encouraged or inspired to do a podcast such as the Oasis Wellness of Life. Remember, we talked about it being for the overall wellness. Well, I want to make sure part of my legacy is to be able to share that my pain was not in vain. It also talks about in this article to make sure that you are around or surround yourself with empathetic people, because people can sometimes be a mirror to you and they can tell you things about yourself that's not true. But if you're told those things often enough, you start to believe them. So if they tell you to snap out of it, or if they tell you that you're weak because you're feeling this mentally, they tell you any of these negative things, oftentimes they're projecting their own personal opinions onto you or their own personal experiences onto you. Their experiences, their negative baggage, any of that, it's really none of our business, right? So I believe that those are the things that hold us and keep us in this stifling position to where we can't live full out. We don't play full out. And I'm not saying can't because we don't have the ability, but I mean because of the position or because of what you're feeling, you don't have the ability to do it because it's mental. It's all in the state of mind. What is life? 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we not react, but how we respond to it, right? So let's keep going into this because this is a subject, especially again in this time. I know we're talking about the festivities and everything, but you can also feel, this sadness that goes on as well. So this is going to be part one because we have a nice long, juicy article that I want us to really understand and take notes in our book. And I'll keep sprinkling a little bit of what I learned. It's a very freeing experience when you start to walk in your truth and you start to live full out, not worrying what people are thinking or people are saying about you because they're going to talk. Whether you succeed or whether you fail, they're still going to talk. So why not give them something to talk about, right? All right. So let's go here. So they talk about the post-traumatic stress, the signs and the symptoms. Okay, so also there's a couple of different. There's a ASD, which is okay. This is one of my words, y'all. Y'all know I'm very, very, very transparent here. But acute stress disorder. Let's have an issue with pronouncing acute, but acute stress disorder, right? Acute stress disorder, not to get this confused with autism spectrum disorder, which may kind of mirror one another. So acute stress disorder is another type of traumatic stress disorder that occurs in some people after a traumatic event. If symptoms of traumatic stress appears for less than 1 month, you may have an acute stress disorder and not PTSD. Either way, it's important to take your mental health serious, especially if you're experiencing intrusive memories. Okay. According to an article written by Dr. by Dr. John W. Barnhill, MD, symptoms of ASD, which is acute stress disorder, are unpleasant, intense, and may cause you to feel like it's difficult to function normally. Most often, symptoms begin shortly after you experience a traumatic event. If symptoms persist beyond 1 month, you may get a diagnosis of PTSD. And remember, in natural wellness, we don't diagnose, we don't cure, we don't prescribe, we recommend, and we help you to overcome a challenge, right? And we always recommend that you see your medical doctor for any type of traditional medical, treatments or and such, right? Okay, it also goes into the chances of treatment and recovery for acute stress disorder are optimistic once you have been removed from the situation, because you can start to suffer from post-traumatic stress and still be in the same situation, and then there's another occurrence and another occurrence. So how are you going to get mental relief or any type of relief? And also, as we go later in this article, it talks about how the mental starts to generate physical symptoms, right? Or act itself out into physical symptoms and such. Okay. So we talk about the chances of treatment are great, but you need to understand, be around empathetic people so that you can talk about it openly without being ashamed or without being afraid. Being around critical people, all it does is just push you back into that shell, back into that trauma of that age, right? Okay. There are helpful, supportive people. Don't be surprised if you feel the need to describe the traumatic event several times. Many people find that it reduces their traumatic stress and intrusive memories when they have opportunities to talk about it over and over in a safe treatment environment. It's helpful to surround yourself with empathetic friends or loved ones. If you do not have the opportunity to if you don't have opportunity to talk with close friends, your doctor or your healthcare professional makes a good sounding board, right? So also, you can get help with, again, like I said, sleep disorders, not being able to sleep or waking up, with, bad nightmares, or just not being able even to fall asleep, trouble sleeping, and other physical signs like stomach ache. It can also show itself in a stomach ache. What types of events lead to post-traumatic stress? For many people living with PTSD, the stress disorder was caused by a first-hand direct experience, such as a serious injury, violence, or the threat of death. It doesn't always happen that way, though. Exposure to traumatic events can occur indirectly as well. For example, if you had experienced someone dying, or you witnessed a traumatic event that happened to someone else, those are indirect exposures to traumatic events that can just as seriously affect your mental health. This factor is essential in knowing how to treat PTSD and where to go for treatment. So I'm going to stop us there or pause us there. And in the next, or part 2, we're going to get into what those 22 signs and symptoms are. And we're going to get into a little bit deeper about how you go into, for me, it's prayer, meditation, and, I've been in therapy several times to, make sure that I'm on the right track, and just wanted to let you know that there's nothing wrong with that, right? People they will judge you, and they will, but then when they're judging you or what have you, and we're not taking care of our mental health, it can lead to serious, serious, serious consequences, like that not being able to regain that 30% that you may have lost at that traumatic time. See, I didn't know that. That was the huge aha moment for me, that you actually lose. That made sense to me. Sometimes things will make sense to you at certain times. Well, it made sense to me why some things have been troubling or bothersome for me, or why some decision makings was troublesome or bothersome for me. It made sense all of a sudden. It's like, wow, that's why. 30% was suppressing that trauma. Another 30% suppressing that trauma. Then if you had another, so now your whole person is making decisions based on trauma. So sometimes, one other thing I'll share with you that we learned as well was that certain times and certain situations, somebody will trigger you, or something will trigger you, and then it'll come up. So that 3-year-old child that witnessed that traumatic experience may come up in anger, in an inappropriate situation or time, anger. Or the person may come up, if you're frightened, and that's what you've learned is fear, that fearful person will come up. So it's very important that we help each other to understand that it is okay to get help. If we break our finger, or if we, something happens with our knee or whatever, we seek help and we seek care for trauma. But trauma in our mental, it has a stigmatism against it that says we're not supposed to get help. We're supposed to deal with it, or that we're weak if we don't deal with it. But I want to just paradigm shift that a little bit today and say, you know what? It's your strength when you can face that there's a situation, I need to go handle it, versus I'm going to suppress it. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't happen, or it didn't happen, or it's not existent. They're still suppressing all of that toxicity. And eventually, like when you suppress or put a pressure cooker on a pot, put the top on there, it's going to explode if you don't attend to it. So make sure that you are taking care of yourself, getting plenty of water. Water is very, very important, that you're getting your proper rest, that you're getting your nutrition, that you're making sure that, you take some time out. And I'm talking to myself as well. Take some time out to balance. Make sure that you balance, meaning if you have to meditate, if you have to walk, do yoga, all of these things that are very, 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 very helpful and good for us. We have to feed ourselves, right? Prayer. I did not miss prayer. I think I started off with that, but I'm going to end with that as well. I pray, right? You have to be able to connect, right? So I believe that's everything that I wanted to get to you. I was so excited to be able to share what I've learned. I thought it was just so amazing. I'm going to go back to my book one more time and see if there's anything else here. A couple of other signs here, but we're going to save those for our next, or part 2 on post-traumatic stress. So make sure that you stay tuned for part 2. All righty. Don't forget to listen, learn, and leverage the information. And make sure that you look out for part 2. All righty. Bye for now.